Welcome to Solutions with Courtney Anderson. I'm Courtney Anderson, and this is episode 235. Episode 235. Yummy. So, what is on our menu for episode 235 of our show? Well, first up, we have a show that's part of our Help Situation Spotlight series. And that is our series, of course, where community members like yourself reach out, share ideas with me, and say, help! Tell me about a situation. I shine a spotlight on that situation you've described for the duration of the show. What is our spotlight shining on today? Well, our show topic today is I look young and people don't take me seriously at work. I look young and people don't take me seriously at work. So that's our show topic. I look young and people don't take me seriously at work. And this is one of the show topics that, as I work through show preparation and bounce ideas off of the people that I work with on this show, sometimes I'll get feedback and people, they'll say, well, is that really a show? I mean, is that something that, people really struggle with, or is that sort of just that one person? And this is one of the topics that may appear to some people not to be a real problem, but it is. And it's also one of the show topics that I personally identified with. Now, I may identify with the show topic because I want to believe that I look young. And perhaps I want to believe that people don't take me seriously at work. But I have had some feedback over the last couple of decades of working, where I do think that some of us do appear to others at times to be youthful, and although that could be potentially a positive, it also in some situations may be a negative, and that people may think, well, this person, even if I don't really know exactly how old they are, I know how old I think they might be, and youth and inexperience and lack of maturity is not going to be something that's going to be helpful in their work arena. So this is something that people do deal with, and I'm glad that we're doing the show today, because I don't know if this topic gets enough discussion. We certainly think about things that are in our mind that we're not supposed to, make jokes about somebody's, appearance at work when we're talking about their gender. We're not supposed to, say things about people when we're talking about their color. But in terms of our appearance, and especially looking young, most people don't really think this is really off limits. So in other words, if somebody's at work and they say to a coworker, right? So they're talking to the coworker who they think looks young or youthful, and they're saying something about work, and then they stop and they turn to the coworker and they say, "Oh, I'm sure you were just a baby, when we had that client here at the office." Stuff like that. Often people don't think that's off limits. And let's dive into this, because I've observed people say things like this when I've been on site at organizations doing consulting or assessments to prepare for corporate education programs. And I've also had my own experiences with this. And again, I think it's partially because we would think, oh, I'm not going to say anything to someone See, the sort of the other side of the spectrum, somebody wouldn't necessarily feel immediately okay to say to a coworker, hey, yeah, talking about the client, and oh, yeah, I guess you might have been here. I mean, it's back in the Stone Age. Fred Flintstone was probably here when you were here with that client. Did you guys even have electricity back then? Are you still using candlelight? There's more awareness about situations with people who might appear, quote, older. In many parts of the world, in the U.S., in fact, there's a federal law that protects people who are older from workplace discrimination based on age. And it's the Age Discrimination Employment Act. It's from 1967, and it's a federal law everywhere in the United States, and basically says work decisions are not permitted to be made based on the category of age, and it defines someone as older if they're 40 years old and older. So you don't. So that's a protected class. Protected from what? They're protected from decisions being made based on the fact that they're 40 or older. So you can't say, hey, I'm not going to give you promotion because you're too old if they're over 40. That type of thing. So that's a federal law in the U.S. It's been the law since 1967. And there is more and more awareness of this. In fact, it's one of the fastest rising areas in many years. It's the fastest rising area of workplace discrimination claims. And as a lawyer, it's one of the really common areas that I do strategic education programs for managers, supervisors, and team members for my client organizations, so that they understand this is federal law. This has been prohibited since 1967. It's not new. We talk about what the consequences are, and we talk about, more importantly, why. Like, why is that the law, right? And we talk about how we make sure that we are not in violation of it. And there are similar types of laws and or cultural practices and organizational policies around the world. The challenge, I think, when we look at this topic, the specific show today, right? I look young, and people don't take me seriously at work. Some people's response to this is, and? Like, what's the problem? But yet that same group will often become very, very angry when they talk about the other age end of the spectrum, right? And it's people who are over 40. And they'll say, well, my goodness, nobody wants to hire somebody, right, who is older. And that's illegal. And I'm like, yes, it is. That's why we do all the training on it. And that's why, as a lawyer in the past, I took cases based on this, of course. On the other end of the spectrum, it's not a federal law. If somebody looks younger, and to do the first scenario I shared, where somebody's like, oh, you look so young. You're just a baby. You probably weren't even an apple in your mother's eye at that time. You probably didn't even exist. You probably weren't even around. You don't even remember that. If you were here, you probably don't remember. Okay. People don't tend to think, oh, that's a problem, because there's not a law. So this isn't a show we're talking about law, because it would be in our different series. It'd be in our Law Lovers Lounge series. This is a series where we're talking about this concept, but it does impact, like many of the things we talk about, these other areas. And part of the reason, forget the law, part of the reason the Age Discrimination Employment Act is because, hey, if you had a situation where people said, I'm not going to hire people who are over 40 or who I believe are over 40, because those are two different things, right? Then you're going to have a lot of people who aren't able to work. So what do we do as a society? I mean, how do we absorb that? People just sort of wandering around all day with nothing to do because they're, quote, too old. I mean, there are mental health things that happen, and emotional problems, and then financial problems for many people. I mean, what do you do with your life when everyone says, hey, you're too old? I mean, that is a society. We can't absorb that. We also have situations where, in our demographics, this is one of our largest groups, because if people are living longer, and we've got, huge numbers of people born in different generations, like baby boomers. So, the society can't absorb it. We need people to have a purpose. We need people to feel engaged in their communities and in their work, and we need people to be able to feel and actually be of service to others, right? Through either volunteer work or paid work. So there are a multitude of reasons, right? We need people to work and pay taxes, right? So there's a multitude of reasons, and we have science, and we've talked about in other programs. People are living longer and longer, right? One of the fastest groups in terms of demographics are people over 90. because people live longer, and as they live longer, and we have better science and technology and treatment for all types of things that used to debilitate people, and who knows what breakthroughs are around the corner. I mean, if we eradicate, cancer and heart disease, who knows how long, we'll live and be contributing. So if people are living 90 years old and you told them at 40 that they're too old to work, what are they supposed to do for 50 plus years? And we can see it. On the other end of the spectrum, though, it's a challenge, because many of the reasons that people ideally think, oh, I want a younger team member, right? And a lot of organizations recruit from traditional age college students, right? They want somebody coming out of a 4-year university program, because the idea is, hey, that person hasn't, you know, gotten stuck in patterns of behavior, and so I can sort of mold them into, my corporate culture, into my organizational culture. And there's a lot to be said to that. On the other end of the spectrum, just like there are stereotypes and there's prejudice against different groups, right? Same thing with somebody who's young or appears to be young. The idea is that, youth is energetic, and that's a stereotype, and the other idea is that youth is, uninformed. Right? They're so young, they don't know anything. The stereotype with the person over 40, and I keep using 40 because that's the federal law cutoff, right? In this law I mentioned, ADEA, Age Discrimination Employment Act in the states, and so that's why I'm mentioning 40. And these laws were enacted when people, if they lived to be, in their 60s, that was average. So, if you're going to die at 60 and you retire, your last 20 years would start at 40. And that's sort of where some of the markers were when these laws were enacted. But that law was from 1967. Now it sounds kind of silly. And in fact, when I train on this and we do corporate programs on this, I do jokes about it, right? I do a whole thing and I set it up and I'm like, hey, do you guys know that you're not allowed to discriminate against people who are older? And they're like, yeah. And then I say, okay, do you know what age you're old? Do you know what the federal government has decided was the birth date when you were officially old and you get federal protection at work and you're in a protected class and no one can use your age as a deciding factor for a decision at work? And they're like, no. And then they give out numbers. They're like 65, 70, 55. And then I say 40 and they laugh. I mean, I do it like a joke, right? But the thing is, then I tell them I'm not kidding. Like, I'm serious. And then a lot of them get really upset. What? I'm like, that's been the law. It's 1967. Have you looked? It hasn't changed. It seems weird. It sounds silly now because you think 40, that's ridiculous. Well, that's because people live longer now. But if you expected that you'd be dead by 60, then 40 was the last 20 years. Now people think, well, maybe my 80s will be my time. So now they think 60, that's sort of 65 is retirement time. Or 67. That makes sense if you live longer. And like I said, depending on what we're able to accomplish, who knows what may happen in my life and in your life, right? For maybe, people will be living 180. I don't know. I do know this, that looking young is like every other one of these situations. It puts us in a situation where we're susceptible to stereotype and prejudice. And again, the people who are older, they have sort of that stereotype, right? You can't teach an old dog new tricks. The stereotype of young people is that you can teach them and you can mold them, right? You can create your own ideal person, right? It's that whole idea. I'll make them into everything I want. I'll teach them everything. They'll be mentoring underneath me. I'll be their mentor, and they'll learn the ways of the world. And this presupposes they don't have their own identity and that they don't know anything. And there's a whole subset of people who just, quote, look young. Now that's culturally defined, and it's how it's based on a lot of the cultural expectations, but that happens to people, and it really becomes a problem for somebody who's at work and needs to focus on credibility and leadership, and then they have people assume that they're not qualified because they, quote, look young. Often they are young, but sometimes, this is the thing about all this, it's all relative. So some people are 40 years old and they feel like, oh my goodness, yeah, I am old. I'm retired now. I'm so tired. Other people are 25 years old and feel like I'm old. I'm tired. I've met people all over the world. I met a lady who was giving a speech one time, and I want to say she was 35. Yeah, it was. I'm pretty sure. We were just chatting, and she was telling me, about her life and everything. The reason I remember she was 35 is because she was telling me she was a grandmother. And even at the time, I remember thinking, "Wow," but that's not weird, really. If somebody has a child, in their teens, even their late teens, then yeah, people are grandparents at 35. So often we think grandparent, we think old. When you look young, there are all of these stereotypes that come with that. People prejudge you, prejudice. And there's often not a lot of empathy and awareness that it does real damage. So I did a program in my Courtney, I'm Curious series, which is a series where people ask me questions that they're curious about related to me as an individual. And I did a show about, opening my own law firm, in my 20s, and how challenging that was. Right? I think I was 26. And part of the challenge is, so, you go to court and I'm all dressed up, I'm doing my lawyer thing, or my idea of what a lawyer thing is. I've got my suit and I've got my briefcase and I'm there, and then I'm ready to do my work, and then people are like, "You're the lawyer? You?" And then I'm like, "Yeah, I'm in a suit, right?" I mean, there's only, here's the thing. When you look at this, and I always mention in our programs to go to CourtneyAnderson.com, one, because that's our central website, and then I'm trying to make sure that as these programs are disseminated around the world, and it is awesome, they're in so many different countries, I have so much data, I'm shocked, that I remind people that this is part of a larger experience. So this show is one thing that we do. We have a companion version of this, which is our video show or our television talk show podcast. We have articles, we've got a blog, we've got webinars and seminars and ebooks and speeches and all kind of stuff. So yeah, come to CourtneyAnderson.com. And we also have a show page for each individual show. So this is episode 235. And that means on CourtneyAnderson.com, there's within that, they're in the 700 page range as at the time of the show taping of content, 700 plus pages of content on that website. So there's a section, there's a website URL that'll take you right to the microsite, right? And that link should be in the content embedded in the file and the tags on this show, if you haven't found it. But you could just go to CourtneyAnderson.com, put in, "Hey, episode 235, look young," or whatever, and it'll take you there. And on that, I list highlights, right? I list talking points. I list some of the things that we discussed in the program. And one of the things that I have linked to on the CourtneyAnderson.com site is an article from Cosmopolitan. Cosmopolitan, of course, one of the partners I've done interviews with and appeared in their magazine talking about work-related issues. So yay, Cosmopolitan, the U.S. version. And so they had an article, and I've got the link here, and it says, "Can looking too young hurt you at work? Most women would kill to look years younger than they are, but could it jeopardize your career?" And yeah. And there's a narrative from the person in the article, and they have a quote, and they said, "Whenever I was mistaken for someone junior, I just sucked it up and moved forward." And that's kind of a positive thing, right? The article also talks about this idea of dressing, that you want to, sort of dress more maturely to try to, offset some of the stereotypes. And the anecdote I was sharing earlier about going to court, in my 20s as the lawyer at my own law firm, the deal is the clothes and the dress and the, accessories or whatever, they're only going to do so much. It's not like you take somebody who sort of appears young, maybe because they are, or they just looked out like they are, and you can put them in an outfit and magically everybody thinks, "Oh, they're mature and have 35 years of experience." It doesn't happen. You're still you. So I don't harp on in this show a solution to go out and dress older necessarily as that'll fix it, because even when in my own experience, when I'm in my mind, literally the most conservative, I'm in a pantsuit, It is a dark blue or black. I mean, I put on pearls. I remember I went through. I still love pearls. Just a beautiful piece of nature, and one of my favorite types of jewelry. So I still love them, and I wear them often. Maybe I'll wear some tomorrow. But I remember when I was at this point earlier, I intentionally thought, okay, I'll wear pearls, right? Because in my mind, like more mature, sophisticated women wore pearls. I tried to ensure that my makeup was more muted, right? So I'm not wearing like my favorite, electric hot pink eyeshadow, right? Because no, I need to blend in. I need to be more muted. So I'm wearing, a brown eyeshadow. I'm wearing my pearls. I'm wearing my conservative suit. I'm doing all I can do. And this, and it still doesn't do much, because the challenge is that it's often in the face, right? That's kind of where they're focusing when they're kind of coming up with this age thing. And you're still you. So even you in the most conservative outfit you can imagine, with the most conservative, accessories and shoes, and you're doing everything in your power. You're thinking like, I am dressed as maturely as I possibly can. It's still only going to take you so far. Now, it's important. I don't really think necessarily we need to harp on. I figured our audience. I mean, obviously, if you're having issues with people's perception of age, then you don't want to go dressed like a teenager to work. So, as a male or female, you want to dress like an adult, right? So put on adult clothes. Many of the adult clothes have buttons on them, all right? So if you're in a tank top, you're not in adult clothes. You need to be in adult clothes, and adult shoes, and adult attire, just because that's what happens. I know some people say, well, I'm in an industry and I'm in a creative, and like, we don't have to wear that. I get it. The thing is, though, you want to meet the cultural expectations of your organization. So don't go in a suit and pearls if everybody else is wearing, casual clothes. You'll stand out and you'll seem kind of weird. You still, though, want to make sure that you're erring on the side of not enough versus too much. And we even see, I love teaching, over the last couple of years, is the tech booms. They sort of like a wave, right? So in the 90s, it was, there was a tech boom there. Then in the 90s, going into the panic over the supposed Y2K, which for the public at least wasn't much, kind of fizzled. And the idea there, for people who weren't around or paying attention or aware, there was this huge tech boom in the 90s, and then and everything with the .com was funded, and on every financial media, it's going to be the biggest thing in the world. Some of them were, many of them weren't. And then there was a big fear that when the computers, this is obviously, I'm not anywhere near competent speaking of it in general, the fear when the computers had to calculate a new date going from the 1900s to 2000s, that would cause like sort of a potentially catastrophic system, and all the computers would shut down, and all of our fledgling at that point online things would shut down, and there was like a huge fear, and it was covered, and then whatever happened, if something happened behind the scenes that the public's not aware of, then I'm still not aware of it, but everything kept working pretty much. So then there's been another tech boom, right? I mean, there's there are little ones and then there's big ones, and so I know when they had we look at recent ones like the Facebooks, you harken back to even way before the 90s, right? The earlier tech booms of the Bill Gates and the Steve Jobs, when they were coming out, in the 70s and early in the 80s, right? The thing that was amazing is that they were susceptible to the same problem that you hear people later. With Mark Zuckerberg, this whole idea of, hey, Steve Jobs, you're a little kid working in your mom's garage. That's not a real company. You're nothing. Bill Gates, you're a kid. Mark Zuckerberg, you're a kid and you wear kid type clothes. And this whole thing of discounting somebody because they're, quote, young. And we sit and we think, well, hey, but they're aberrations. Well, yeah, they're aberrations with their specific talent and their specific fields, but they're not aberrations in general. I think that, here's the thing, there are many, many people that actually are young. So these are two different things. One is I actually am young and I look young. The other thing is I'm not really young, but I just look young. But there are people who are young who have tons of talents and ideas. That whole sort of stereotype I said earlier, where this, organizations are like, oh, we want to hire people, who are young in calendar years because we can mold them. But that presupposes they don't have any identity. It presupposes that, hey, just because they're 22, they're just like a blank slate, and they don't have ideas or feelings or ethics or beliefs or passion or dreams or, limits or anything, right? They're just like waiting for you to come along and make them into something. It's ridiculous. Of course they have all types of experiences. My goodness, really? It's offensive. And even though not everybody's of any age or background is going to go out and, create literally, industries, it doesn't necessarily mean that people don't have talents and contributions. And I think part of what the challenge is on this show is that we hurt all of our organizations by these ideas that this person's who is actually young calendar age and who also looks young, that in some way they have nothing to contribute. It's offensive, and it's also ridiculous. Of course, look, I can find somebody who's got 40 years of experience and has nothing to contribute. Experience doesn't mean expertise. It literally could mean that they were just sitting in some office getting by with doing nothing for 40 years. I could find somebody who's 14 and may have expertise. And so when you're an organization and you're looking at all the things that organizations bring me in for, right? Engagement, surveys, our employees aren't engaged. Okay, well, let's start working backwards and figure out why. I already have some ideas, just in general of what causes that. High turnover, right? Low retention. What is it that's causing people to leave? Some of this is based in this offensive concept that a young aged person is just an empty vessel. And again, it's offensive. It's like the person's never known a child or a teenager. Goodness gracious. I haven't been a teenager in a while. And even when I'm around a teenager now, I remember how hard that was, how tough it is. That's, figuring out who you are. And peer pressure and all the things that you struggle with. By the time somebody's, in their 20s, they've gone through a lot. And some people get to that point and they've gone through an incredible amount. And it's just disgusting, I think, to equate young calendar age with nothing to contribute. Just empty. They just need to be molded. It's just not accurate. And it hurts organizations when they do this. This other challenge we talk about here, people not taking you seriously, is where you really aren't really young. Now, this is, again, age is totally relative. I remember when I did start the law firm and I was, 26, I felt so old. I really did. I'd been through a lot of education. I had a ton of, experience in life, relatively speaking. And I just felt old. I felt tired then. I feel less tired now than I do, than I did then. I felt really done at 26. And the challenge is I moved into my 30s, right? Now I'm old. Now old's all relative. There are people 30s old. I was 30 years ago. Hey, it's all relative, right? And that's sort of the problem with this. The beauty of older discrimination is that you either are in that group or you just hope you live long enough to be in the group, right? I think the challenge with younger appearance or younger calendar age discrimination is that people have you're either in the group or you've been through the group. So you do, so people who look back who aren't in the group, their argument is valid. They were that once. And they may have been that age once and felt, like I just said, I felt tired at 26, 27. They may have been that age and look back and think, oh, that was the greatest time ever. And now I'm not super, energized and my life isn't what I thought it would be. And it's often if somebody looks back and their own experience was that was, quote, good for them, that was a good time, the past, and now isn't, then it can influence how they treat people who, are younger age or who appear to be young. And again, it's all relative. So to my 90-year-old friends, somebody who's 70 is young. Again, these are all relative things. And the easiest thing to do with age, of course, is shouldn't be a factor at all. It should be about skills. It should be about expertise. It should be about engagement. And yeah, are there people who are younger than you and younger than I am who can teach us and who do teach us? Yeah, it happens all the time. Are there people who are older than us and they are not wise, right? That's the stereotype of older person. Oh, they should be wise. And then when someone who's young is wise, people say, oh, they're wise beyond their years. As if there's a correlation. Come on. We all know people that are older than us who are no more mature than literally a child, an actual child, like a 7-year-old. This idea, the myth, the stereotype that, well, I'm wise just because I'm old, it's absolutely not logical, but it's something that it sounds nice. And I think that when, there's always somebody older than us, right? Even the 90-year-old has the 100-year-old. The 100-year-old has, until you get to that time where for like a day or an hour, you're the world's oldest person. And then they have you on, a little thing on the internet, world's oldest person on the news or whatever. And then either you die or somebody else they find who is older than you. And boom, now you're not the world's oldest. But you only get that little brief moment in the sun where it's literally there's no one else older than you for maybe a little bit of time. And boom, then you're either gone or they found somebody else who really was older than you. Absent that, there's always somebody older than you. So just stop all of this. If you were wise when you were young, often you're wise when you're older. If you weren't wise when you were young, sometimes you're wise when you're older, and sometimes you're never wise. If you're young and you look young, you're not going to be able to dress your way out of it or accessorize your way out of it. And I'll see people do this. Young people, calendar-wise, will put on really, really great, appropriate for their industry, attire. And I just have to, personal digression, this is a personal thing, I love suits. I love wearing them, obviously, when I am doing my professional work, but I love a man in a suit. I really do. I just think it's just the most, and when you watch movies that were made like in Hollywood in the 1940s and 50s, and men wore suits, and I just think that's a great look, and it comes back in vogue over time. But I just love it, like a well worn tailored suit and tie. Like, I just love it. Okay, so here's the thing: you want to be comfortable in your clothes. You don't want to look like you went and found something from your grandparents' closet. You want it to fit you in your size and be well suited, so literally it fits and looks nice. And then just realize that if you look young, you look young. If you actually are young, then you're young. That's great. If you literally in your mind think, I'm not young at all, I'm in my 30s, or I'm in my 40s, or I'm in my 50s, or I'm in my 60s. And I've had people, but if you're in your 60s, then you're not young. Here's the deal though. Age is so subjective, and it's so individual. I have relatives who really, honestly, in their 60s and 70s, and even older, look 20 or 30 or sometimes 40 years younger. And I'm not exaggerating. I'm not just saying that to be nice and say like, oh, what great genes people have in my family. I'm really serious. And, for me, it was even when I was, my own relatives, my parents and grandparents, I'd be out with, some relative and somebody would say, oh, there's, you guys are, is that your sibling or something? And I'm, oh, that's my parent or grandparent. No way. Yeah, they just look young. And again, it's all culturally defined. What I mean by that is what does youth look like, right? Well, it looks different depending on where you are in the world and what the culture defines. So in some places, the idea is that, somebody's elasticity in their skin and, whatever. So whatever it is, then that thing is what a lot of people that I am related to have. And the weird thing is, so when I was in my 20s, I kind of got it, right? I thought, okay, well, I am a little younger than a lot of the other, lawyers or professors or whatever. So it makes, some logical sense. Then as I moved through, in my 30s, I thought, well, clearly this will stop. The thing where people are condescending towards me, where people have said that, I've had all kind of versions of this. People have said to me, it must be hard for me not having any credibility, as a professor or I guess a lawyer. I've been a hearing examiner, which is where I had the powers similar to a district judge to make decisions in some employment law situations for school districts. I've been in a lot of situations where I do have decision making and very stressful decision making. Even as a professor, it's very stressful. As a consultant speaking to the executive officers and of an organization that's you know a, a global brand. That's a lot. The idea, as I went in, in my 30s, I thought, well, it'll diminish. Like, I won't get this kind of comments about, you wouldn't remember that, you probably were a baby, I don't even, oh my goodness, like that would go away, because again, like, the years are going by, right? Like, I'm not 26 right now. It wouldn't even make any sense, because how would I have done that show talking about the past, right? That would have had to be the current. If I was 26, I'm not. And happy to be. I said now I feel less stressed out and less tired than I did then, right? Partially because all the stuff that I was trying to do, that I was so scared, start a business, do this, buy a first house, make all this stuff happen. I've done it all. So yeah, now I have different things I'm working on, but I also have that sense of being more relaxed, because I accomplished a lot of the things, which put me in a different situation in terms of all different aspects of my life. And then I also have more confidence in myself, because I'm like, yeah, I know how to do this because I've done it. And I still, on occasion, or maybe it's my imagination, but other people have heard it. I still get that same sort of nastiness, Oh, I just can't imagine you even know what I'm talking about. I mean, I can't even imagine, were you even alive when they're talking, something in the past? And the thing is, most people don't know other people's ages. In some parts of the world, like I said, you have laws to prevent discrimination, so you're not even allowed to ask, right? How old are you? But we see each other. So when you see somebody, you just have all kind of things. And it's influenced by all types of things. So dress does play a role sometimes, attire. And then, hairstyles, accessories, they clue people in. And then how people sort of carry themselves. Interestingly enough, posture, things of that nature. It's interesting. Body language tells a lot. And not being taken seriously is a huge obstacle and problem in getting stuff done. And especially if you're somebody who was in leadership positions or aspired to move into leadership positions, and you had expertise, and you weren't waiting on some magic, thing like, oh, I'll wait 10 years and then maybe, I'll have an opportunity. No, you create opportunity, and you're making things happen. You need people to understand, like, yeah, I am the lawyer. I am the business owner. I am the one buying the house. I am the manager. I am. And even if you're not in any leadership position, it's imperative, at least on everything that I've shared with you in our programs, right, that you need to let other people understand where you're going. So even if it's an entry-level job, I worked for a lawyer for a while. It was part-time before I had finished school and finished my licensing, and I was really clear from the beginning. Like, I have plans and goals, and here's where my goal is. For me, it was to open my own firm. And if it had been to work with that lawyer for whatever, I would have been really clear from the outset, from the job interview. If my goal was to one day be partner in that firm, I would have told people, and then I would have asked for mentoring and help to get me there. You have to tell people, because it's, again, that sort of and it's pervasive, globally, where this idea that somebody who's younger calendar age, just, they have no clue about anything. They're just some aimless person, and you have to go create them and mold them and all this kind of stuff. It's offensive. That's why the young person has to say to people really assertively, I'm honored to be here. This is a great position. I'm so excited to learn about this industry, and this fits into my career goal and aspiration is to do blah blah blah. You got to tell them, and then you got to be assertive, because whether somebody is an office doormat, meaning that they're taken advantage of by other people, isn't based on age. It's based on that whole concept of how much, personal power do you command. And a lot of the really atrocious and awful things that happen that are discriminatory and also blatantly illegal are because someone thinks, hey, this person is younger than I am, so I'm going to exploit them at work. I'm going to take advantage of their naivete. I'm going to sexually assault them. I'm going to do all kinds of things because I can, because they're young, and they just have to, put up with it because they're young. And that is absolutely at every level beyond wrong. Just because I'm young doesn't mean I'm going to be a victim. Not me today, but me in the past. If you're young, and this is one of those things you have literally no control over. When you were born, hey, look, nobody asked me, right? I honestly don't know anything other than that's what they told me when I was born. I don't even have any independent proof, as I don't recall myself, right? But I believe people, right? I saw my birth certificate or whatever. So, like, beyond that, then leave it alone. But you have to let people understand you're not just if you are really young in age, then you got to let people know that you're not somebody who's going to be an easy prey. If there's somebody who's looking to take advantage of someone, you're not going to be a victim, and that you know your rights. And even if you don't actually know your rights, that thing with power, personal power, you need to use your posture and your voice and your eye contact, culturally appropriate, but let people know. You're not someone that makes a good victim. That does a lot to this thing about taking you seriously. People may not take you seriously, but you don't necessarily need them to believe in you. You just need them to not obstruct your path to get done what you need to get done. So if you're in an office and people are talking about you behind your back and giggling about how you look so young and what do you know, are you going to be able to stop all of that? Probably not. But if you can get it to a point where the people who are in decision-making positions understand, you've communicated to them what your goals are, you've stepped up, and your work is exemplary, and when your work is awful and you make a mistake, you go and you ask for more help and guidance, and you let people understand that you're really serious. The easiest way to get people to take you seriously is that you need to be serious. This isn't a joke. This is your life. And even if it's a part-time job or a temporary job, I don't care if it's your dream job. You've got to let people understand from the beginning, who are you? That sense of self, like I talked about, personal power. You will be taken seriously because they will see that you do take yourself seriously. And it does a lot to prevent being a victim of all types of horrible things. And it also does a lot to teach people, look, no matter what they may say or do behind your back, hopefully you don't know. And also, more importantly than that, honestly, who cares? The people who are in decision-making positions need to understand that you are serious. How do they know that? Because you told them. I just said that earlier. In the interview, in your times where you go and you seek out help and guidance, you ask people. I do this all the time. I reach out to somebody who's in a position of making decisions, and I'll see when I can calendar some time, and I'll sit and I'll ask them questions related to either work that I'm doing or goals that I may have or experiences that they've had or all kinds of things. I volunteer, right, to do more, to show my skill set. You got to speak up. But looking young, hopefully, in the long run, is a good thing. And you can also exploit it. I'm going to mention this. As I said, I still have instances where I get comments about the perceived age thing. And the benefit of that is not so much at work, but in other things in life. So let's say that I'm going to go out and look at buying some property, right? Some residential property. It could be commercial property. It doesn't really matter. There are times I want to just go out and get information and not be bothered, not have people, especially salespeople, get all excited and then try to start pressuring me and closing a sale or thinking they're closing a sale. I just want to go get information. I just want to go see something or check something out. So I will intentionally, because I'm not at work, I'm working, but I'm not at one of these other jobs where I'm dressed up in a suit. I'll intentionally put on really casual clothes, maybe sweatpants and tennis shoes, and not wear any makeup at all, and use to my advantage that people sometimes think I'm younger than I am, because they'll totally ignore me. This happened relatively recently. I went to go somewhere, and there's one of the people who, had they thought I was a real customer potentially, they would have run all over and tried to, get all my information and, pester me and everything. But I'm not, I don't look to them like what they think, one of their customers looks like. So they mostly ignored me, which was actually, it did a couple of things. One, it taught me that I would never use them if I did need someone with their services because of how they treated me. I also thought they weren't a very good business person, but also more importantly than that, it allowed me to go get the information and assess the property without them bothering me really. Good. In that situation, I didn't want them to take me seriously as a potential purchaser. I wanted to be able to go over there and get data and not be bothered, and not have them also try to influence my assessment with their, trying to upsell me and tell me how great everything was. So I used it to my advantage. And you can do this all types of times in life, especially if people's perception of age is, again, it's so subjective. And it mostly is based on what themselves, like they look in the mirror and brush their teeth and what they think. If they think, oh, I look like what a 50-year-old looks like, then anybody who in their mind looks younger than that, they think looks young, and anybody in their mind who looks older than that looks old. And it's all relative. But at work, you want to be taken seriously, be serious. That's the answer to the question. You need to be serious. Are people still probably going to talk about you if you look quote unquote young or you really are young? Yeah. Can you do anything about that? No. I don't really. And if I were you, we did a show, it was about an Eleanor Roosevelt quote. You wouldn't worry so much about what other people think about you if you realize how little they do. And it's so true. You're not at the front of anybody else's mind other than really yourself and a very small group of people who are in your, most intense community of caring. A parent, a grandparent, a spouse, a child, a sibling, your best friend. Beyond this really tiny, close knit, your most intimate relationships in your life, other people aren't thinking about you. They're thinking about themselves and then the people in their communities of caring that are most important to them. And that's awesome. But you want to be taken seriously, just be serious. Now, if you're goofy, not goofy fun, like, oh, that's so goofy, but goofy like you're not organized. You go supposedly to seek out information and mentoring, and then you don't have any agenda. So the people are just sort of sitting there asking you, what do you want? And you're like, I just want to learn from you. Look, learn what? You got to be specific. Remember I said earlier, at 20, at 30, probably if I lived to 120 in an interview, I'd say to people, this is what my goal is. This is my strategy. This is where I'm going. If you want to be taken seriously, be serious. If you don't have a plan, then guess what? You are in trouble because you don't have a plan. And I don't care if you're 20 or you're 60. Nobody else is going to have the plan for you. They might be able to give you information if you ask specifically, but they're not going to come along and say, hey, here's a life. There you go. Unless it's their own agenda. That's that thing earlier. People think they're going to mold someone or control somebody else. And that's not healthy for anybody. But looking young is annoying and people mention it. Because at work, it's not helping you. And you know it and they know it. That's why they're mentioning it. Sometimes people do this to bully you. Sometimes people do this to undercut your confidence. If you are somebody who moved early at a young calendar age into positions where you had more authority, then often what happens is even in your 30s, you're still sometimes younger than the average, or in your 40s, younger than average. You're still going to hear that stuff. And when people say it to you, it's usually not a compliment. It's not like you're hanging out with your friends and they're like, wow, what kind of moisturizer are you using? Your skin looks great. It's not like that. It's usually meant to kind of get you off, focus and undercut your professionalism or expertise. But it's not about you. It's about them. First of all, never, you and we don't even think stuff like this. I don't even think about other people's perceived age or even their actual age because it's not important. I do care about what they can do, like their skills, when I'm hiring somebody or when I'm working for somebody. What are their skills? What are their ethics? What do they believe in? How do they treat themselves? How do they treat other people? Are they content or happy in their lives? These type of things are the things I care about. I understand that there are people who are a disaster at 18 and there are people who are a disaster at 88 and everywhere in between. And that's who I'm trying to not work with or hire or work for or be in a business deal with, because you're a disaster, and it's not, I can't fix that. But I've taken people seriously, and I've worked with people and for people, you know, um, who are younger than I am, and who are probably the same age, who are older, and the age is not the issue. It's how you see yourself. And when people make comments about age, it's a reflection on them and their thinking process. The reason I said you and I don't do this, because we don't think like this. I've told my dermatologist, and I mean it. Like I said, I'm less stressed out now that I'm older. So many things are so much easier now than they were when I, you know, was younger. And for a lot of us, that's how life is. It gets better. There's some research that shows your happiest time frame is your 50s, which may be for you individually and for me individually, you know. And maybe each year will get better. That's the idea, right? But for people who it's not, their life isn't working for them, then the age thing is a huge thing. And they get in all this, I'm not getting older, I just, life didn't turn out like I wanted. And then that's who you'll, hear these comments from, and some of the behavior. And, that's about them and not about you. If you look youthful, often, not always, sometimes, often, it's a sign of good health. So take that and run with it as you work on your health plan. For all of us, any gender, any age, take care of your skin. We just often ignore that. Humans think, and they go out and there's sun abuse, and there's some people are around other chemicals. Some people do things that even exacerbate this, like smoking and things. And your skin, deserves to be nourished and treated well. And it's amazing with just skincare, with healthy diet, with focusing on that lower stress life, with practicing that joyful art of business where, you got things that excite you and energize you. It's amazing what that'll do for, quote, age, what you, quote, look like. It really is. And if someone says, hey, you look nice, that's a compliment. If somebody's talking about age, they're not really complimenting you. And you and I know that, and that's okay. It's not acceptable. I wouldn't do it myself. I wouldn't even think about that. But you need to understand what's happening. So all those little comments, as I said at the outset of the program, where someone's like, I'm sure you weren't even working then. You probably weren't even a baby when that client was at the firm. Stuff like that is not a compliment. It's an attack. It may be a passive aggressive one, but you need to see her for what it is. And now you know about that person, exactly what's going on in their head. So that tells you to steer clear. It's not going to be an ally. It's not going to be somebody that you can, trust for business deals. It's not going to be somebody you want necessarily to confide in or work together in a substantive way, because they don't see themselves in a healthy way, and they're attacking you, and you got it. And you never attack back because there's nothing to attack about. Don't make offhand jokes. Oh, you're right. I wasn't even, anywhere around at that. Just leave it alone. So what I mean by leave it alone is, depending on the setting, if, just sort of like, that's leave it alone. I'm not laughing. I'm not fake going along like, isn't that funny? It's not. I understand what it was. It was an attempt at an attack to undermine my confidence and expertise, and it's not going to work. Like, you know what you know, and you don't know what you don't know. And when somebody says these things, then you know why they're doing it. They're not doing it they're not trying to be funny. Anytime people say things like, and I still hear stuff like this, people will say things like, oh, you remind me of my granddaughter or my daughter or something, and the weird thing is, the person who says it, sometimes later it'll turn out I'll get information, they might be really close to my age. They don't even know my age, right? But people just jump to all kinds of conclusions. And they say all this goofy stuff, and it's like, if this is anything tangential to work, then no, I'm not your kid. I'm not your grandkid. I may even be older than you. Right? But and I understand why they're doing it. It's again, that undercutting thing. And it's coming from them and their own issues. But I see her for what it is. I acknowledge it. So it might just be silent acknowledgement, depending on the setting. I might be, and then I just keep doing my job. Because I understand this isn't about me. I'm going to continue to do my moisturizing. Like I said, I told my dermatologist, I don't mind getting older because age is awesome. The alternative is I'm not alive. So, hey, I'm going to enjoy today. And again, I don't mind getting older. I do want to be healthier. And I do need to continue. It's, to focus on that. But when I look in the mirror, I feel good. I mean, it's all relative. But I think, hey, on a great day, when I had a great sleep and I'm feeling great, I may look in the mirror and say, my goodness, not only do I feel less tired than I did, you know, in the past, I look better. And sometimes it's all subjective. It might be accurate. So if you feel good about how you look, if you feel good about your work, if you feel good about you, if your life is working for you, then celebrate. And if you're in that weird quandary where people talk to you like you're a child but you're really older, you can't do anything about it other than what it's about. It's about them. It's about some sort of attempt to intimidate or undercut or, you know, be destructive. And so you see it. So ignore it. It's even weirder when it's not even, when they're talking to you like, you're a child and you're their age or older, but whatever. And if you really are younger, you can't do anything about it. That's when you were born. I assume if I lived, knock on some wood, to be 108 or whatever, it's the same thing. What does it feel like to be 108? Every time you ask, you read, or you have a documentary, or you listen to people, or what does it feel like? It feels the same, basically. What did it feel like to be 11? Right? Because our show's only for adults. So you and I, we were 11. It felt like we were us, but we had a different life. We were usually smaller sized, and we were, didn't have the same type of knowledge, but we dealt with problems. 11-year-olds have problems. We got life stuff. And I feel the same. I feel better. Mostly all I do is feel better. And I am also very surprised and happy to be alive, right? Who knew? And I am less stressed out, and I am less anxious, and I am less worried, and things are easier for me, just life in general. But, it was hard at 11. If I lived to be 108, I figure I'd probably look back and say, all right, when I was 11, it was tough. When I was 26, it was tough. When I was, 70, it was tough. Now I'm 108, and, I still feel like me. You feel like you. I think we do have a responsibility for our health. Do everything that we can to be really aggressive about a high quality life tied to our physical, our mental health. Those things. But this thing about the young, and people don't take me seriously. They don't take you seriously. That's about them. If, again, you want them to take you seriously, be serious. They may still make fun of you. She's so serious. She's so young. I can't believe how serious she is. She's supposed to be underage. Whatever. Ignore it. Just be serious. And then you got to deliver. You have to deliver. Like I said earlier, if you're goofy in a negative way, you're unorganized, you don't deliver, you're inconsistent, you're dishonest, you miss deadlines and you make up lies. Look, don't blame it on age. I'm just learning. No, you're an adult. Step up. This is it. You're an adult, and you're an adult for the rest of your life, right? So whenever your age of maturity was, 16 or 18 or whatever, no more excuses. Deliver. When you mess up, you immediately apologize, right? You take action, and you acknowledge it, right? Acknowledge, apology, action. And you're serious, because it's your life, and you have serious goals and stuff and that you're working on, goals that you're surpassing. So you want to be taken seriously, be serious. Making somebody like you, whole different topic, not going to happen. The person who makes the little comments about age, perceived age, they already told you everything about them in terms of how they see themselves and how they see the world and how they view you. So, you know how to be cautious around them. And then the rest of your life, go out there and live it and enjoy it. And you know what? This is a great conversation because you're alive. That's the good part. And like I said, as we take care of our health and we live this life where we invest in how we feel, our work and our endeavors, right? That's the joyful art of business. It's amazing what that does for how other people, how old or young people think you are. Just being engaged in your own life. But yeah, this is a real challenge, and it does impact you. But when people say and do these things, you know who they are. And you need to make sure the people who are making decisions understand that you're serious. They may say it and they may look at you like you're silly. They may say comments, well, when I was your age, I just had to learn what was going on. Okay, well, good. But you're you. You're not them. Remember, you're not an empty vessel. You're not waiting on them to come and tell you who you are. You're in a person. You're a formed person. You're going to learn from other people. You're going to grow and hopefully mature, and hopefully we will become a little bit more wise. But you're not just some empty blank slate waiting for them to tell you who you are. You've had a life of experiences to get to being 18 or 21 or whatever. But again, we all have to assert that personal individual power, right? And teach people. I'm not a victim. I'm not someone who doesn't understand my value. I'm not somebody who's intimidated. I'm not somebody who, doesn't value myself. And then continue to really enjoy this opportunity and look young. And the weird thing is the years do go by. And like I said, the older you get age-wise, the people who are the same age as you, especially people who've known you, right, since you were kids or went to school together when you were younger, and they look like whatever chronological age you are, or at least what people expect. And then if you really do not really seem to age the same way, it's kind of fun. And a lot of that, of course, is just related to how you treat yourself, right? Again, the sun, make sure that your sun protection and sun damage and all these other things. But so you look young, good. People don't take you seriously is a totally different issue. And you can't use age, chronological age, or the fact that you, quote, look young as an excuse. Are you delivering? And the anecdotes we shared earlier from these, sort of icons of, business, right? Steve Jobs, yeah, people, I'm sure thought then, like, this kid's goofy, but the deal is he delivered. So even if people, like I said, they still may talk about you or make nasty comments about your age or perceived age, the deal is if you delivered, they're on board. That's the beauty of business, right? If you deliver. That's why I said you cannot afford, inconsistency, poor work product, because that won't work for anybody. And sometimes when somebody might be chronologically younger, they'll say, well, I'm just learning. I got it, but come on. This is your shot. It's your life. And I know that you're serious because you're here with the show. Only people who come to our show and the programs I do and the speeches and the seminars and workshops are people who are serious. Because people who aren't serious, they don't care at all. Like, this isn't entertainment. Hopefully it's entertaining, but it's not, purely just to entertain. It's to be really assertive about this, surpassing your goals. So I'm delighted that you were here on the program. Again, I do encourage you to come to CourtneyAnderson.com as much as you can. Bookmark the site, come back, check out the links on our show page. I also am on Twitter at Zealous Business. If you found our program on one of our distribution partners like iTunes or Stitcher or Libsyn or iHeartRadio, please leave ratings or reviews. Those are really important for the growth of our show. And reach out to me. Let me know if you have any show ideas or there's anything that I may do to be of service as you work to surpass your goals. Thank you so much for being here today.